Good evening, everyone. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner, and tonight I'm going to cover the topic of a sand battery. Okay? Now then, what is a sand battery? I'm going to answer that in this video tonight, but before I do, I wanted to let everybody know that I published 5 Kindle books, and you are welcome to read any of them. And if you want to read these Kindle books, leave me a comment in the comment below. I will send you a link, and you can start reading them. They're $5 a piece. Enjoy. In the meantime, a sand battery, if constructed properly, can be used to heat rooms in your home. But before I discuss methods on how this could be done, I first have to show you ways to obtain heat from objects other than your municipal electric company. Now, do you recall when I did the video about the Fresnel lens and the heat sink, and I told you to use that with your solar panels? Okay, when you use a Fresnel lens, it makes sure that no matter where the sun is in the sky, you're still going to get power from your solar battery, your solar panel, okay, your solar cell. And what happens is that your solar panel is going to get hot, real red hot. Okay, it can get so hot it can set your house on fire. We don't want that to happen. So, what we're going to do is going to put a heat sink, or as this case would be, a bunch of small pipes on the back of your solar panel. And the heat is going to be transferred from the solar panel to these pipes. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill up these pipes, and I think the best thing to fill it up with is antifreeze, but if you figure out something else to fill them up, great, I'd love to hear from it. But anyway, whether you use antifreeze or something else, you have to transfer the heat from the solar panel to what's inside those pipes so you can get that out of your solar panel. Okay? Now, my idea would be, hypothetically speaking, to have the solar panel heat up, the heat would go to the pipes, it hit the antifreeze would then go through a series of pipes that would actually go into sand and heat up the sand. And I'll tell you why it should heat up the sand. Here we go. Alright. Now, I'm sure the Survival on a Budget Made Easy can come up with some brilliant idea to get the heat from the solar panel to those pipes, to what's in those pipes, and on into the sand battery. Love to hear what he has to come up with on that. And if anybody else wants to come up with some brilliant ideas, I'd love to hear from them. Now, could you generate heat from sound waves? Well, I already talked about that in some previous videos about thermal acoustics. So yes, you can. So, you can generate from the sound waves too. If you can get that into some antifreeze and send that off into the sand battery, you're good. Okay? So what items do you need to construct a sand battery? Well, obviously you're going to need some sand. The darker the better, because lighter sand reflects heat for some reason. Okay, now, you could, I don't know how successful you'd be, you could go to a junkyard, get a bunch of broken glass, ground that glass, and turn it right back into sand. There you go. You got practically free sand there. Of course, you'd have to find some kind of device that could ground the glass up so thin that it would become sand again. That's something you may want to look into. Okay, so you have a supply of sand at last. Maybe you have some broken glass you've never used before. Well, there you go. Now you have a use for it. You'll need some kind of a sealed container. Remember, you've got to make sure that the heat stays within the container. You don't want it to get out once it gets into the sand. Even though sand will release heat slowly, you want to keep it in the sand as long as you possibly can until you're ready to use it. Okay? Usually you wouldn't want to use the heat from a sand battery until you are at night when it gets really, really cold. Okay? That's when you want to use it. Alright. So now you have the sand, you have some kind of container that you can keep the sand in. Now you also have to have a layer on the outside of the container because you're going to make the sand really, really hot, about say 500-600 degrees. The reason for that is because if the sand dissipates the heat slowly, it's going to produce you some heat for a long period of time, but you've got to get the sand really, really hot to do that. Okay? So you want the inside of the container to contain the heat inside the container. Then the outside of it would be something that would keep your hands from being burnt while you carry the container around. Get the picture? Okay. Now the next thing you'd want to do is you'd want to attach a thermostat and a spigot to this container. Why? Because you would want to only release some of that heat out of that container until your room got warm enough. I mean, you don't want to turn your room into a 600-degree furnace, obviously, but you want to release some of that heat, and then you want to turn it off, which means you seal the spigot, causing the heat to stay inside until you're ready to turn it back on. And you'll need a thermostat because you're going to tell the thermostat at a certain point, open the spigot. Otherwise, keep it shut. That's what you're trying to do. So, how does the sand retain the heat? Well, when the molecules of sand are compressed together, they will retain heat. That means if you stuff heat between the compressed sand molecules, you'll basically create a sand battery. The object is to stuff as much heat as you can between the molecules of the sand. Also keep in mind that sand doesn't release heat, that it collects quickly. So it can store heat for lengthy periods of time. If you have ever been on a beach at sunset, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, it is true that sand does eventually release heat. That's why you need a hermetically sealed container so that you can keep the heat inside of it until you're ready to use it. This would force the sand to retain its heat until you're ready to use it, obviously. You would probably have to construct a double layer container. Like I said, the inner layer would keep the heat in, the outer layer would protect your hands so you could transport the sand battery to wherever you needed it, and then open the spigot. Okay? Probably the best thing to do on something like that is to make an inner layer for the box containing the sand, and then put fiberglass insulation around, and then seal it up with an outer layer so that the fiberglass would keep the heat inside the container and keep your hands safe on the outside. But if Survival on a Budget Made Easy has a better recommendation, I'm all ears. Okay? Alright. And that's basically how that would work. Alright. I will be more than welcome and thrilled to present you some more information in a future video, so I would like for you to stay tuned.